Ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Hello, my name is Ana Martinez, and first off, I would like to say that we all know drinking alcohol impairs our judgment. So it allows us to gain confidence when, say, talking to someone or dancing, but unfortunately it gives us confidence to drive when we're actually not able to. So drinking alcohol doesn't seem as bad as society portrays it, but in reality it causes a lot of damage. So that now leads me to my proposition, which is that raising the legal drinking age to 25 will be safer for society. Again, my proposition is that raising the legal drinking age to 25 will be safer for society. So I'm going to I'm going to prove this by saying that first, drunk driving accidents will decrease, and second, that the brain isn't fully developed until 25. So my first claim is that I don't know if you have been in a drunk driving accident or have been with someone that has been in, who was driving and was drunk and you were in an accident with them, but the consequences are very serious. I personally have a friend who drove under the influence once, and it left him inside the hospital, or in the hospital, and although he did not die, he was lucky to get serious injuries and to leave him with, say, being paralyzed. And although he did not die, it's not the same story for everyone. There are thousands of deaths annually due to driving under the influence, and according to the Centers for Disease Control Prevention, in 2015, 10,265 people died in alcohol-impaired driving crashes, accounting for nearly 1/3 or 29% of all traffic-related deaths in the United States. During this time, as we all know, the legal drinking age was still 21, and even though the number of deaths seemed significantly high at that time, it was worse before. In 1986, after they enforced the legal drinking age to 21, according to Jen Christensen, a producer and editor with CNN's Health, Medical, and Wellness unit, states that fatal crashes involving a young driver dropped significantly from 61% in 1982 to 31% in 1995. I know the statistic seems old compared to the other recent ones that I have, but it proves that the legal drinking age proves that when the legal drinking age was increased, the number of fatal crashes decreased by 50%, pretty much in half. Therefore, increasing the legal age to drink to 25, as my proposition is, will decrease the number of fatal crashes even more. So this will allow people to gain more experience behind the wheel, and it will allow for more people to mature over time. Now this leads me into my second claim, and that is the brain isn't fully developed until 25. During the ages of 12 until 25, our brains are a long developing process into an adult state physically and behaviorally. Coordination, emotion, motivation, judgment, and memory are some of the things that are developing, and they are at a critical stage of development. The National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcohol states that heavy drinking during early and mid-adolescence has been found to be associated with memory problems and neuropsychological deficits. On the other hand, drinking at 25 is not so severe to the brain because it's already fully developed. Of course, people can still gain addictions or get memory loss or still have problems, but the chances are decreased when the brain is already fully developed. And people that oppose this proposition say that at 18, we are pretty much given the right to vote, or we are given the right to vote, get married, serve on a jury, own land, and much more. But then they would ask, why wouldn't we be able to drink at 21 if we're already given those other rights? As a 21-year-old, yes, you should be able to drink, but for health and safety reasons, the legal age should be increased to obviously 25. This law would be based off the safety for the society and kids growing up for their brain development, rather than a right given at 21 for people to be happy. It would be more beneficial rather than a happy community because they are allowed to drink. All in all, if we raise the legal drinking age to 25, it will lead to a safer society because it would decrease the development issues on the brain, as well as drunk driving fatalities. What I want to say that's pretty important is that I'm not trying to appeal to the younger society which want to turn 21 in order to drink. I'm doing this or saying this because the idea will be beneficial to society and keeping it safe, rather than having someone being happy that they're 21 and being able to drink. And that's all.
All right, Adam, I thought that you did a pretty good job at the beginning of the speech skirting the idea that you're making a policy argument by simply arguing that the consequences of raising the driving age would be that it would be safer, that it would save lives. And I thought you did a nice job labeling that. There's a solid preview of what the two supporting points are going to be. I think we could understand why people might see this as being somewhat controversial, although I'm not sure that anybody is proposing it. If there was some discussion that this is in the works, or people are advising and suggesting that this be enacted, I think it would be a good idea to maybe give us a little bit of background on that. On the main structure of the speech, when we get to the argument, you don't really remind us of what that first point is. It's not like we're going to forget it, but I think your phrasing of it needs to be there because it is strongly connected to the idea that you're making a claim of fact, that this would be that this is basically going to decrease drunk driving deaths if we do this. That's kind of summarizing what your argument is on that particular point. You've got some personal examples and a hypothetical example that you're using. You've got some factual data and statistics that demonstrate the significance of drunk driving deaths and accidents. I think those are perfectly fine. Those aren't particularly controversial, and so I doubt that there'll be much dispute on those points. The place where there is going to be a little bit of controversy is the data that you have that's a little older, which is not necessarily a problem because you're using it. It's a example of when the when the driving age was. Not the driving age, the drinking age was changed and what the consequences were. And you basically have one piece of evidence that you're citing there. And it's a good piece of evidence. I just think that there's been discussion about that for a number of years. There's criticism of that information, and that I think you maybe would be better adding a little bit more information to substantiate the link between a higher drinking age and lower numbers of drunk driving. You're kind of extrapolating, well, if we increased it from 18 to 21 and it dropped 50%, then if we increased it another 4 years, it should drop another 50%. And I'm not sure that you can make that inference, and I think we need to have a little bit more data to substantiate that part of the claim. The second point, when you do get to it in the body of the speech, you do remind us of what the claim was originally concerning the brain development. I think that again, I'm not sure that the controversy is whether or not the brain is developing, but whether waiting for the brain to develop is going to have a beneficial effect. So that's really the inference that you're making, is that delaying this will allow brain development, which is going to reduce other kinds of harms. That's the inference that you're making. So it would be clearer if you had that as the claim. Now, that's what your argument is. It's just that you've got data as your claim instead of the inference as the claim, and you want the inference to be the point that's the structure for the speech. Pardon me. And your evidence here, I think, is a little bit more conclusionary. You've got a piece of testimony on brain development, but that's about as far as it goes. And then you kind of just make the assumption that people, if they wait until they're 25, we're going to have fewer problems. And I think, again, you need some better data on this. This is the one that felt a little thin in your argument. Presentation is okay. except right at the end, I think maybe we didn't quite talk about this. We ran out of time, or everybody ran out of me as I was trying to finish up our discussion last week on our crash course on public speaking. Probably the best exit line that you can make is just reminding us of what your claim is. Come back to the proposition. What you don't want to do is end up with the Porky Pig exit line, which is kind of what you have. You know what I'm talking about? That's all, folks. That sounds kind of like weak sauce. So let's just come back with your argument, and say, so I believe that increasing the drinking age to 25 would reduce these problems. The one thing that I thought was a little bit problematic in your argument, you've got an answer to the value claim about whether or not people have a right to drink and, at 18, that sort of thing. And I think that although you're trying to anticipate, here's a rebuttal issue that I have to address, the problem is that moves you closer to being a policy argument because you're now addressing what the consequences of doing this action would be as opposed to whether or not the action would work. So there might be another way to address that and simply say, I know that people feel this way, but that's for another argument. That's for an argument about whether or not we ought to do this. My claim is simply, if we did do this, this would be the outcome. All right, thank you.